Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Test Associates podcast, where we explore ideas, innovations, and leaders that are shaping the future of technology. This episode is released in collaboration with the AI Awards, which is a global platform for AI leaders and organizations to gain recognition for their groundbreaking innovations in AI. To participate, please click the link in the description below. Joining us today is Gayathry Adhavan. She is a seasoned QA leader whose career journey quite mirrors the evolution of software testing in itself. So we will explore that more in this interview. She's got a deep expertise that spans across functional, non-functional, and performance testing. She has consistently been at the forefront of innovation, shaping how quality engineering adapts to emerging technologies. Without any further ado, welcome to the podcast, Gayatri. How are you?
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Thank you for those kind words. I'm doing good. How are
Yeah,
you?
not too bad. Gayatri is joining us from Berlin.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here and sharing my experiences and
Yeah.
perspectives on testing. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Not to make you feel jealous, but we have a bit of sunlight over here in Brighton.
It's cloudy and rainy here, so
Oh,
I'm very jealous.
well, okay, it'll be fine. You'll get like the sunlight maybe tomorrow. You never know. And it'll be raining cats and dogs here tomorrow. We never know. That's just UK and Europe weather in general.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's get started with the first question. So you entered the QA field during a very different era of testing, right? So it must have been back in 2027, is it?
Yeah.
2007 essentially. So can you share what that landscape looked like and how you carved your niche into automation this early on in your career?
To be honest, when I started with QA, it was a completely different era.
Yeah.
Testing was largely manual and endless Excel sheets. You will have a lot of columns in the Excel sheets, and regression cycles are too long. It would take weeks for complex applications as such. Automation was seen as luxury at that time. It wasn't like more prominent that is available everywhere. Agile was still emerging, so most teams work in traditional waterfall model, which means that QA comes at the tail end of delivery and more like a support function before delivery, rather than it being a part of the cycle. And ISTQB certification was almost like a passport into the profession. What drew
Really?
me in, yeah, ISTQB is the only certification. If you have it, you are a very valued QA at that time. Uh, what pulled me into automation was more about experimentation and repetitive tasks. I would be doomed trying to repeat some test cases every time during a release and regression cycles. I was completely doomed about it. So that pushed me into exploring tools which are available in the market. I would say QDP, currently it is called UFT. That was one of the prominent tools that was existing at that time, and literally everybody was using this tool for automation. And obviously, documentation was very scarce then. Now we have YouTube channels telling us about how the tool works, or there are so many blogs that we could find which talks about how the tool works. But back in
Yeah.
the days, it was very scarce. I wouldn't say it wasn't available, but it was very little that was available. So you got to learn things by like
Hmm.
breaking it, figuring out how to fix the breaks that you did and everything. But what I did was I started small. I started working on to create some automation framework, which kind of links test data, scripts, and reporting and stuff. Like I said, mainly to avoid repeating test cases, which I
Yeah.
hated doing.
Yeah.
And that saved a lot of time and improved more of coverage and testing and everything. And a few years into it, I was already deep in automation. So
Oh,
that
wow.
area actually helped me build my foundation, I would say, not just in
Yeah.
automation, but in a way to think how quality overall is. And
Yeah.
yeah, that literally helped me everywhere.
Yeah, it
Whatever
almost
I'm
seems
doing
like you
now
did
is
everything from scratch, isn't it? Like even
yeah.
when it came to like exploring automation in general, because it wasn't like as widely known as it is now or as much.
Mhm.
It did not have like a lot of importance back then. So you had to like build everything on your own, and
Yeah.
explore everything on your own. So I think that really helped with gaining that expertise that you have now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't I can only think of an era before mine, I started in the 2000s, and what happened to the people who were working in 90s, and IT was still existing, at least even like 2 years or 3 years behind me, IT was
Yeah.
still existing, and people were still testing, and it was a different stage completely, where whatever documentation I thought I had, probably people didn't have back then. So it was more about the experimentation that pushes people into it, I guess. And that's what did to me. So yeah.
Makes sense. You've also written like a really good article for Software Testing News. And my next question is related to the topics that you've written about. So many software testers, they tend to focus on functional testing, but you ventured into non-functional testing obviously quite early. So what really drew you to that side of QA?
For me, functional testing was, when I started, functional testing was very good, and I felt complete when I finished the project as such. But then as I grew, I figured out that it was just one side of the coin. The other side is a non-functional testing, because there are so many aspects in testing that are not fully covered as a part of functional.
Yeah.
Can system handle load or stress that the customer that the system promises to the customer, is one of the questions that is not answered by functional testing at all. So trying to be more curious to figure out why systems behave a certain way under pressure, that will tell us a lot of information about the system that you cannot understand with the functional testing. I loved finding bottlenecks. Like when you find a bottleneck, you always try to find the root cause of it. And you go back to tracing it to the code or configuration or the setup or the architecture that was built around the system. And then it leads to working with the developers to try and optimize the code, optimize the SQL, whatever the bottleneck is about.
Yeah.
And it actually, to be honest, when I started doing performance engineering, which is more about profiling the code and working with the developers, that kind of left me to see software as a living ecosystem, meaning the architectural decision, even a small one, or the data flow, or the network latency, that would change completely the user experience. So you make a slight change in any of these parameters, the user might have a completely different experience than what they are having now, whether it is for the good or the bad. So that was more interesting for me, rather than trying to check if the user can log in. I'm not saying bad about function testing. Function testing still is the primary point, but alongside function testing, non-functional is also another area which is parallel to it and which is much needed. Non-functional testing is more invisible when everything is fine, but when something fails, everyone literally notices it, and
Yeah.
that would change the perspective of the whole business
Yeah.
altogether. Be it e-commerce system or heavy transactional financial systems, everything is around non-functional areas.
Yeah.
And the working on different systems on the non-functional testing, it kind of gave me experience that literally taught me that NFT is not about being technical, it's more about being strategical. It protects user experience, business continuity, brand reputation even. And once I had that understanding, I would never say function testing will finish everything and we can go for a release. I would always ask questions about, has this been tested? Is this included in the testing? Where are the NFRs? And all those kind of questions would come into play.
Of course. Yeah, there's just so much more to consider than what meets the eye in general, isn't it?
Yeah,
But even
sure.
in your article, like you mentioned performance, security, usability, scalability, and obviously resilience. You've mentioned them as key dimensions, isn't it? So
Mhm.
according to you, how should teams decide which one matters the most?
There's no one size that could fit everybody. It really comes down to context and consequence, I would say. Every system has its own unique risk profile based on what the system does and who uh, is dependent on the system.
Yeah.
Say, banking platform, you can't afford for a security lapse to happen because you are dealing with money and finances, and that would be a very bad reputation to the bank.
Mhm.
E-commerce side on the other side, they always live and die with the performance, because if their system is not performant enough during Black Friday, then they lose revenue. So, and it kind of depends, like internal systems like ERP systems, they are more on stability, reliability, and everything, rather than all the other aspects. So instead of trying to give equal weightage to every dimension, that everybody should try to tie a knot between each of the functional aspect to a measurable business outcome. So the question I personally ask is, if this particular quality attribute fails, what is the impact to the customer or the business? And that literally solves the problem. If a 3-second delay in Amazon cart, say for example, or any of these e-commerce system, if a 3-second delay leads to abandoning the cart on the whole, then performance is not a technical issue anymore. It's more like a business problem, because the
Of
cart is
course.
gone.
Yeah, it becomes
And
a revenue problem in general.
if there is a downtime, and that means that there are some transactions that are missed at the back end, then resiliency and availability takes more precedence. So once that connection is made clear, prioritization becomes straightforward to figure out which dimension needs to be taken care of for the particular system.
Yeah.
And it's also about visualizing the risk impact mapping, and plotting out that will literally give us a lot more insights on how we have to approach testing, non-functional testing for that. And that literally shifts the conversation of QA from being a test coverage to mitigating the risk from business. That might cause a lot of business issues as is. So we are literally mitigating the business risk. And that is
Yeah.
the real value of non-functional testing on the whole. We literally shouldn't test everything. It is more about testing more intelligently based on what is needed for the system, rather than
Right. Just
everything covered.
prioritization, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Other than that, like obviously your article also mentions NFRs. So you've brought that into like early discussions and embedding NFT in like CI/CD. So how can teams actually do that, especially under time pressure as well?
So embedding NFT early into the cycle is never about adding more work into the cycle. It's more about integrating the correct checks with the right depth. So it's a
Yeah.
combination of that. It's a balance, basically, making it lightweight enough to run more frequently, but deep enough to catch meaningful regression issues or anything that would come by. If you don't have to run a full-fledged stress test, say for example, for every sprint that we work on, but rather we could do a very small scale performance smoke test on the pipeline, targeting a shorter number of checks and monitoring the responses and the throughput that comes out. If those metrics change a lot, then it kind of clearly implies that we are having some kind of technical debt coming up before we reach production. Other critical part, I would say, in terms of bringing NFT early is to define measurable NFRs. NFRs are not functional requirements that everybody knows. Instead of having vague expectations like the app should be fast enough or app should be available or reliable enough, it is more about defining a quantifiable goals. Say 95% of the transaction should be completed within 2 seconds, or when all the users are in, the application should be working this way and it should be available for 90% of time. Something of that sort, which is more like a measurable goal.
Yeah.
And that would give everybody, like whoever is involved, the QA, the development team, we all share a common language in terms of quality when that kind of measurable NFRs is given. And taking out the correct NFRs out of the BAs or out of the product managers is the QA's work as well. So that kind of brings QA already early in the cycle. So you are starting to engage at the time of defining NFRs as such. And the third aspect, I would say, in terms of bringing early NFT without adding a lot of work into the work with the timelines and everything that we have, is to have more observability. Production monitoring is a key thing in this case. Looking at real users latency, the error rates, the API performance patterns, all of this can feed back And that kind of closes the gap between the pre-release testing that was done and the live user experience. That's kind of a metric which would give you a reality check to figure out if the assumptions that you made during the pre-release still holds good in the real world conditions. When all of these elements are connected together, like measurable NFRs and automated CI baseline checks and the feedback monitoring, then NFT is not a phase anymore. It is a part of all phases of delivery. So it's not a separate phase altogether. Then it is literally everywhere now. And that way you can maintain a speed without compromising the stability of the application as such. It's all about testing right early and more continuously. That's the key thing.
Yeah, of course. That's the key takeaway. You've also been exploring AI and machine learning in QA, isn't it? So where do you see the real potential and where should the community be cautious?
AI and machine learning are already reshaping the way people look at testing, and it also reshapes a lot in terms of how we do the testing as well. The real potential, I would say, lies in augmentation and not replacement. So you can't replace everything with an AI. It's more about using the AI that supports more like predictive testing, intelligent defect clustering, maybe performance forecasting, and all of this. Just imagine a system that literally gives us all this information even before we start the testing. That's the future that we have to look forward to. But to talk about areas to be cautious about is AI is only as good as the data that we train the AI with, or the information that we give it. It can amplify bias like to an extent that you can't even figure out, and it could mislead us with the defects, and it could create false confidence on the other side if we don't have that double checking or the review that happens. Transparency might not be fully available for the AI related stuff. So we should ideally be treating AI as a partner and not as a magic bullet, which would solve every issue for us. The human side of asking the right questions, understanding the context, you can't replace that. So you got to work in collaboration. It's the future I am seeing with respect to AI and machine learning is more hybrid. The intuition from human and the machine intelligence. And I'm pretty sure that we will see a new discipline of QA evolving called the ethical QA. It is still existing, but in a different context, I would say. But the ethical QA that I am talking about is to ensure that the AI we use for testing doesn't introduce any new risks or blind spots. So we have to use the advancement for our benefit, not to bring in new defects or issues or risks that would cause the opposite effect of why we have to use it. It is actually an exciting time that I'm looking forward to. If we stay grounded in AI will make QA more intelligent and proactive than ever. I'm looking forward to see where it takes us to.
100%. Like I think even with the new category that we've launched across the board, it's called as AI-powered quality assurance. And it's amazing to see how, companies, teams are doing so much with AI. And but yeah, even the judges have told us about the amazing things that they're achieving, obviously with the ethical quality assurance thing that you've already mentioned. Like I'm no expert in it, but like just reading about stuff like this, it's amazing how much companies can and teams can achieve, But
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning that. I want to take
It's
you back. Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was recently in a workshop where we were trying to use AI to help build websites, say for example, and it was pretty much everything. You don't have to think as what kind of command you should use, what is the syntax, am I doing it correctly? Or back then, that's how it used to be. Like, is the syntax I'm using correct? Is the variable I declared is of the right data type? All of these questions are like more common questions that pops up when you are trying to program something. But with AI, everything is there. So just instruct the AI to say, okay, I have a project now. I want to create a website with this, and this options available. Try out.
Yeah.
AI that does it for you. It kind of builds everything for you. And if you ask AI, it would compile it for you. If there are any issues in compilation, it fixes it for you. And it's really amazing to see how AI is already integrating into the development life cycle, and we should be able to utilize that for more automation as well,
Yeah.
for both for functional and non-functional. So AI is already in place doing its thing. All we have to do is to leverage it for
Yeah.
our benefits.
Yeah, 100%. Because this podcast is in collaboration with the Air Awards, there's another thing that I want to mention. Um, you mentioned a lot about the ethical standpoint of AI in general,
Mhm,
and essentially these are the initiatives or innovations that the awards actually recognizes, because there's so
mhm.
much bad stuff happening as well out there, right? So you want
Yeah.
to consider people that are actually helping the society move forward, and
Mm.
that's essentially what the award program tends to do. But thank you for like bringing that up. But I just wanted to mention that as well. Um, I want to take you back to the previous experience that you've mentioned about your career specifically. It spans from self-taught automation, right? You mentioned. So from that, you've also become a QA architect and a manager. So if you could like go back and give yourself like a younger QA self one piece of advice, what would that be?
If I could talk to my younger self, I would say just don't stop at what works.
Yeah.
Ask how it works as well, uh, which obviously brings in the non-functional elements into picture. But what works is predominantly answered by functional testing. How it works deals with a lot of other things that we don't know. Like I mentioned in my article, the non-functional testing has a lot of dimensions. So it's not just one straightforward answer could tell you how things work under different conditions. I
Mm,
would also be looking at starting small, not just for me, it's for everybody who is listening at the moment,
yeah.
to start small and to use the open source tools that are available to experiment yourself and then observe the system behavior, try to break things, learn about the architecture, networks, cloud environments. All of this come together. The knowledge will make one invaluable
Yeah.
in every conversation that you could go in. And system thinking is a must as well. So I'm saying a lot of things to my younger self, but it's not just for me, it's for everybody who's looking at
Yeah. Yeah.
QA as such. And
100%. You're coming from like experience, so obviously there's a lot to take from there, isn't it?
And there's no perfect condition. Like you can't have everything being available and perfect around you, and then you
Mm.
just sit in the middle and start doing things. That's not how things work. It should be it should be done with your experiments, and that really the hands-on really helps. It builds
Yeah.
confidence and it builds curiosity as well, which helps to go forward in everything. QA
Mm.
is basically evolving very fast. With it started off with cloud native, AI driven now, and automation heavy and everything. But one thing that would never change is what you do in terms of your career. Build your curiosity, and that would be the biggest accelerator for you to move forward. Keep
Yeah.
learning, keep experimenting, and don't stop asking why. And all of this will help
Well
you
said.
move forward.
Very well said. Yeah, definitely keep learning, keep exploring that curiosity. That can be applied across like everything, isn't it? Not just QA
Yeah,
or QA. But thank you so
exactly.
much for mentioning that. It's a really good way to like sort of end the podcast. But um, lovely, Gayatri. Thank you so much for your amazing answers to the questions. And I can't wait for the
Thank you so
readers to
much for
also.
having me.
Oh, no, that's not a problem at all. I hope we get to explore more topics in the future. And I hope that even the readers can read the amazing article that you've written, which is, by the way, already published. And the link to it will be in the description as well. So,
Awesome.
yeah, except for that as well.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you
You
personally, and
too.
it's a pleasure to share my little sense to the whole
Oh,
community as well.
yeah.
Thank
Love
you.
that. Thank you so much, Gayatri.
Thank you.